Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. The Canon RF 35mm f1.8 lens is not a new lens. So you may be wondering why I'm talking about it now. Well, turns out I needed it. Now, as you know, my workhorse lens is this 24-105. This is a great lens. This is an L lens. Quality's really superb. And the 35mm focal length is contained in that zoom range. So why would I want to use this guy? Well, there's a few really good reasons, and I'm going to go over them for you, and it'll help you decide when a zoom is right and when a prime is right. But first, I want to show you what I got it to shoot. That entire sequence was shot with this lens and is the reason I rented it. I needed a lens that could focus close, that could focus shallow, and none of the lenses I own can do that. So that's why I got this lens, and I'm going to be honest with you, it surprised me. This is not going to be a rigorous review of this lens. There's plenty of them out there. This lens has been out for a while. But I'm going to be honest, the quality of it really did surprise me. It did the job far better than I expected, and sometimes you fall into the trap of thinking a lens isn't going to be so great when you listen to people tear it down. Every lens has flaws. You can tear down any lens. But does it work for you? Does it create the images you need? I would argue that you should try lenses before you form a final decision. So I'm going to dive a little bit into the reason I got this lens in a little bit more detail. First, let's have a look at the lens itself. Okay, this is the RF 35mm f1.8. Rather small glass, but the body, as most of the RF lenses, is a little bit thicker than the old EFs used to be. It's got the control ring, as all the RFs do. On this lens, we do actually have the auto and manual focus switch, and we have a stabilizer. So I rented the lens from Camera Exchange here in San Antonio. It's a great camera store. If you're in this area, you might want to go in and have a look. They have a pretty extensive rental department. I'll leave a link to them in the comments below. So why should you have a look at this lens? As I see it, there are four major reasons. First, it is a far better lens than any non-L zoom that contains this focal length. I think they have a 24-105 non-L. Let me tell you, you get a 35 prime, even though it's non-L, it's going to be far better than a non-L zoom. That's kind of getting into kit lens range, not that great. The 24-105 L, which I have, is excellent, and this 35 pushes it. Yeah, color and contrast are going to be a little bit different, but like I said before, look at it for yourself. Does it do the job you need? Second reason is, even if you have a high quality zoom like I do, it does have a couple of features that they don't have. For one thing, it focuses closer than my 24-105. Big selling point for what I was doing here. It has a wider aperture also. So those are two reasons that even the higher quality zoom, this little prime has some features that the zoom doesn't have. Third, there's not yet an L prime at the 35mm focal length. Now, that's at the time of recording this video. I fully expect that Canon will have an L prime in 35mm. I would be shocked if they didn't. Now, even if and when they do come out with the prime, not everyone's going to want to pay that L lens price, right? This lens is very reasonably priced. And if, like me, you don't need to use a lens like this very often, the lower price is a really important selling point. Now, I've been comparing the prime to the zoom. Again, they're not directly comparable. However, because the focal length is contained within the 24-105, it naturally begs the comparison. So let's have a look at how they compare physically. Okay, so for a good size comparison, we've got the lenses here together. We've got the 35 prime, the f1.8 non-L, and we've got the 24 to 105 L lens. Now, it's not really an unfair comparison because the prime really has some uses that this doesn't. I use this for 70% of my photo sessions. I mean, this is my workhorse lens. However, there is a time when I actually would use this lens, and I'm going to talk about what those times might be. Now, let's talk about the strengths of this lens apart from what I used it for. First, it's really good for wide portraits where you need to take a full-length head-to-toe shot of someone. It doesn't have as much distortion as a 24mm lens would. Yes, the 24 covers more, but the 35 is much more close to how your eye would see it. Many photographers consider the range between 35 and 55 or 60 to be somewhat normal to what your eye sees, depending on the photographer. Some see wider, some see more telly, but it doesn't distort in a way that would make it seem unnatural to take a portrait with it. I like the focal length for portraits. It's a good walking around lens for street photography too, because it's pretty compact and it fits on your camera really well. It's pretty fast, f1.8. To go faster than f1.8, you're definitely moving into professional L lens range, but f1.8 is pretty quick. As I've already mentioned, Canon at the time of this video doesn't yet have an L prime in 35mm, so this is the only game going. Now, I want to qualify that a little bit. There are several manufacturers that have prime lenses for the RF system. They're not electronic, they're manual focus. I'm going to leave a link to one I tested some time back. Really good lenses, they're just manual. This little lens focuses down to 6.7 inches. Canon calls it macro, it's 1:2, it's not 1:1, but boy, that's a real handy feature to be able to focus that close. You got the RF control ring, which is, if you don't have a lot of L lenses, that's a new feature. I don't personally use it myself, but I know a lot of photographers love it. It's got image stabilization. That's pretty sweet for a lens in this price range, and it comes in handy even at a 35mm semi-wide focal length. Now I'm going to take a quick second here to show you, I want to show you this lens in action, how I had to use it for what I rented it for, and you'll see that it's pretty cool for what it can do for especially a less expensive lens. Okay, now I'm going to talk about a feature of this lens that is really a little bit different. This lens has not a 1:1, but a macro capability. And for a 35mm prime lens non-L, that's a step up. I don't recall them having those kind of capabilities in this lens, and stabilization. So we've got stabilization and we've got macro capabilities. So I'm just going to shoot a picture of my lens here. I'm probably 6 inches away from that lens. I'm going to get about 6 inches. I'm going to have the camera focus, and it grabs focus. I mean, that is pretty impressive. And I'm at, what am I at? I'm at about 1/30th here, 1/40th. And I'm going to zoom into this image. And it grabbed the focus right in this narrow band here across the top. So I've got the lens wide open. Man, handheld at a 40th of a second, and stabilized macro, not quite 1:1. For the price of this lens, I'm going to call that a win. I've done some other videos with a few other lenses in the Canon line. If you'd like to learn more to help your lens strategy, I'll put a link to it here. As always, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it's been helpful. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. If you've used this lens, I'd love to hear what you thought about it. Until the next video, cheers.